First of all, I'm honored to be here and to open this forum, the forum BizIT that I'm sure will give us all the opportunity to share experiences and to discuss issues that are today of high importance and high relevance in the world, such as security, IoT, e-commerce, employment, and education. I was invited to share with you some of the Israeli achievements that is considered as startup nations. But I would rather leave the achievements for you to read it alone on the slide next to me. And I would focus mostly on how and why all of this is happening. And what lies behind what is called the startup nation and the Israeli achievements. Because as you might know, or might even be surprised, the starting point of Israel was not very promising, to say the least. First of all, we are talking about a relatively small country with a small market. We are about the same size as Serbia, 8 million people. And we live in a very special and specific geopolitical conditions, politically isolated from our main markets. And secondly, in conflict, and when I'm talking about conflict, I'm talking first of all about very violent conflict, and secondly, permanent conflict that endures for 70 years since our establishment. Third point is that we don't have any diplomatic relations with most of our neighbors, and we are practically economically boycotted by all of our neighbors, the very close ones and even remote ones. There is no direct connectivity between Israel and its potential markets. I'm talking about the US, I'm talking about the EU, about East Asia. And maybe one of the most important points is that security and defense is a huge burden on our budget. I would say that the most productive sector in Israel, or in the world, which is the youngsters. In Israel, they have an army duty, men for 3 years, women for 2 years. So relatively, people enter into the working force in a relatively late stage. In addition, Israel is a country of immigrants. Millions of immigrants have arrived to Israel during its establishment. I would say that only in the short period of the decade after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Israel had to absorb more than 1 million immigrants to the country. And it's a country that practically has no natural resources and has a real scarcity of water, practically no drinking water at all. For many years, Israel also suffered the brain drain phenomenon that we know in many other countries. So as Proverb says, necessity is the mother of invention. So Israel just didn't have the choice but to take its challenges and to turn them into advantages. The specific challenges that the country has been facing since its foundation prompted Israel and its government to achieve technological supremacy. And I will give you some examples. I was talking about the limited market of Israel, so this limited market turned Israeli economy into an export-oriented economy. The remote markets that I mentioned and the lack of connectivity between Israel and its partner led to technology services-oriented economy. The fear of boycott and the fear of being dependent only on one market made Israeli markets very diversified, and our trading partners are the EU, the US, and Asia with practically equal share. The lack of natural resources, for example, led the country to think of other generators for economic growth. And water scarcity, for example, forced Israel to abandon or at least to reduce the agricultural products and concentrate mostly on technology with specification of water management and water technology. The military industry in Israel became one of the main sources of innovative products that have been commercialized and adapted to civilian purposes. And I would give the example of cybersecurity that the minister has mentioned, where Israel has become a leading country in cybersecurity. The Army Service, for example, created experienced and very high-skilled youngsters who have been serving in very technologically sophisticated units and brought their know-how to the civil market later on. The massive immigration of a highly educated contributed to the development of R&D industry, as well as to their creativity and cultural diversity and multicultural teams. The immigrants brought with them new creativity, new way of thinking, new know-how, experience, expertise, and they brought with them a lot of connections. So we are talking about cumulative effect, but in addition to it, there is something that was determined or defined by foreigner, kind of Israeli entrepreneurship DNA, wherein the word failure, for example, is considered as part of the experience and therefore is highly evaluated and appreciated. But all this wouldn't have happened without a clear government decision to create an ecosystem that will hold and nurture all this. So first of all, one of the key developments was the foundation of the Office of Chief Scientist that is called today the Innovations Authority, which through different programs encouraged industrial research and innovative projects. And a mechanism has been created or established in Israel to synchronize different bodies, different agencies and sectors, and create communication between four pillars. The first one is the government, the second is the private sector, the academy is the third one, the defense and the army, the fourth one, and in a way also the NGO and the civil society. There was the adoption of law on industrial R&D gave the necessary legal framework, and the minister was focusing on this legal framework here in Serbia. This is something that was an important part and an element key in the process in Israel. The legislation was aimed to facilitate development of science-based export-oriented industries capable of creating employment and also bringing back young talented who went abroad, mostly to the US and in less numbers to Canada and to Australia. In addition, the Office of the Chief Scientist was responsible for launching a Yozma program at that time, which resulted in creating the first VC funds in Israel and promoting VC industry with incentive and tax exemptions, which are still relevant today. Currently in Israel today, there are around 70 local and international active VC funds. So what does the case of Israel show? I believe that the case of Israel shows that the country does not have to be rich in natural resources. It does not have to have big market. A country does not have to be rich in economic resources, and it doesn't have to live in an ideal geopolitical environment in order to establish an efficient ecosystem for innovation. Now, our model might be appealing also for Serbia and might have certain elements that Serbia can take and adjust to its own reality. I would mention we are trying to be involved. The embassy is trying to be involved and to strongly support and actively participate in evolving Serbian startup ecosystem. We see our role here as both promoting and supporting the high-tech scene, working with different stakeholders of the ecosystem, both governmental, NGOs, academic and private sector, which is reflected in our activities. I would mention three sorts of activities that we have. The first one is the Start Tel Aviv competition of Serbian startups, where the winner takes part in the DLD Festival of Innovation in Tel Aviv. It's an annual competition. We are now organizing the 5th one in 2018. We participate in major and the most important conferences here and events with bringing Israeli experts as panelists and as guests. And we are offering specialized courses in Israel in high-tech and entrepreneurship education through our Mashav program. Mashav is our agency for international development aimed at spreading know-how on various topics by training the trainers. I would only, to finalize, I would invite you all and use this opportunity and invite you all to visit the upcoming Cyber Tech event that would be held in Tel Aviv on January 29th and 30 of 2018. It gathers cyber industry professionals and is the biggest event of this kind outside the US. So wishing you a successful conference and thank you very much.